at the Artericambi Gallery with Crystal Z Campbell for a solo exhibition. In the project you showed last year, your research focused on HeLa cells and Reato cells. In people without fingerprints, you still look into the relationship between samples, evidence, and the identity of the subject who left them behind. That is the possibility or not, starting with these recorded data, to reconstruct with archaeological or investigative methods the personal history of an individual. What drew you to the theme of fingerprints?
So I was working on the project with Henrietta Lutz, and during that period I was researching bioethical questions about who our biological samples belong to, in the case of scientific research and after the fact. And while I was looking up materials on eBay, I was searching for some microscopic samples to use in a sculpture. And I stumbled across a fingerprint, and I was able to purchase this fingerprint, or fingertip rather, on eBay. And this fingertip has become the kind of central part of this show. But I still find the fingertip and the purchasing and availability of these materials as a kind of commercialized product still very confusing, and I'm curious, as evident in this show, where and to what and to whom, and what is the narrative behind these particular samples.
So there is this confusing zone created by this commerce in the internet of biological samples, this new collectionism. Can we call it hunger of uniqueness or reality?
Yeah, I think uniqueness is becoming a rare commodity, if you want to say it that way. There's so many, everything has become so commercialized or copied, or the idea of privacy is no longer what it used to be. I'm not sure if we have the option of privacy anymore, whether we are going through our daily lives or in our virtual lives. And so I think, in the case of classifying people, this system of classifying people is becoming, it has existed for over 100 years now, but it's becoming even more intrusive in a way. In our conversation before, you were mentioning the EU establishing biometrics for the new passports, and of course when we go through the airport, our bodies are subject to these entire body scans. So there's a record of our physicality, but I think, in a sense, one of the things that I really wanted to engage in the film People Without Fingerprints is this psychic reality which is at stake now. So, our kind of biometric data is available, but what is the future? What is the possibility and potential of capturing our psychic reality, and how will that be commoditized?
So, talking about the video, so there is this narrative, kind of a narrative we can follow, and this is built starting from these traces and evidences, also material and or sonic. So can you say something about the way you build this narrative?
Yeah, I'm interested in narrative as a form. A narrative is kind of the greatest tool for our social understanding of history, of our family lineage, of our nation's, kind of tales. These things that we share for each other and establish the relationship between us. They establish the relationship between our neighbors, our so-called enemies, all of these different relationships are established through narrative and through different traces in which we think there's a possibility of understanding a certain culture through these traces which are left behind, or these traces now that are transferred to the biometric data. But there's also this kind of prediction and stereotype, in the same case. So there's kind of this double or catch-22 that's happening within these particular fields.
And in the video, there's a delicacy in the way the trays bearing the body of evidence are offered. And also this gesture is illuminated by a special light that, rather than being a clinical light, an operating table, has almost a mystical quality. Is that a way to save them from the archive, or to allude to a different dimension that which they belong to?
I think that's a very good point that you make about the light, because there is, light has such a strong symbolism in itself, and just in terms of religious or spiritual qualities about it. So there's also, in one aspect, on every thing that we touch, for instance, and discard, we throw it away, we throw our, if we buy a coffee at Starbucks and we throw the cup in the trash can, we've also left our trace on this particular cup, and we leave the same trace on our laptops, we leave the same trace on our hairbrush. And these are, there's not really a hierarchy of these things in which we leave our traces on. So one of the works in the show is this soccer ball that I found in the street in my neighborhood that was under a car, so I just crawled under the car and saved it. And I decided to, kind of cover the entire surface of this ball in all the places in which I assumed that the ball would have been touched before, because I wanted to kind of see this trace which I couldn't see. I wanted to manifest, the touch in a way that I couldn't see it for myself. So most of the ball is covered, but at the same time, that material has been covered, and it has also been protected in the way that the surface is covered. So there is, just going back to the question about light, in one hand you have a very scientific way which you can rework and form a narrative just based on, finding the same material in different places. So then you can start constructing, a story behind where you find these specific materials, where you find a specific fiber which matches a shirt that somebody wore and also matches the shirt fiber that is found in their sofa, and these kinds of things. But on the other hand, when you see this light in the film, it's almost like an offering, it's almost like a gift, but it's a gift which is granted for a few seconds and then it's retrieved, it's retracted. And it also has this kind of maybe spiritualistic quality about it. So I just wanted to allude to something which is happening outside of the frame, because what you're seeing in the frame is actually a very small view of, and it's not showing you any context at all. Everything is presented in the same kind of sterile way. And so it really is, a question about what is happening outside more than inside.
There are other works that we can see at the exhibition, built in basic elementary shapes, triangular canvas fixed together and painted on the back. Can you tell us something about these objects?
Yes, this goes back to the triangular forms, go back to the kind of basic understanding of narrative and how narrative serves as kind of a tool for propaganda. I wanted to think of a really basic form, and I was thinking back to being a child and learning the basic shapes and having to trace a triangle, having to trace a square, having to trace a rectangle, having to trace a circle, and over time, starting to associate these shapes with other things, with parts of our cosmology which are larger than, which actually realize the form. So these forms are very abstract. The triangle is very abstract, the circle is very abstract. But then when you think about the sun in relationship to a circle, suddenly your perspective changes and this relationship to the circle shifts. And so I focus on the triangle, and the triangle has many meanings, whether religious or feminist or about equality or the Trinity, all of these different associations, yet it's fundamentally the same form over and over, which the content has just been substituted. So it's kind of this surrogate form in which all of these different narratives have been inserted, and I wanted to think about how these things are coded in our daily language.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, thank you.